Hello and welcome to this week's episode of For the Love of Chiropractic. On today's show, we're going to be taking a deep look into one of the biggest myths of the chiropractic profession. This is something that many doctors are told while they're still in school, things that scare you and ultimately end up limiting your practice and your impact on the patients and the community that you choose to serve. And as we get started today, I'm going to ask you to do two things. Number one, make sure you hit subscribe so you never miss a single episode. If you'd like to leave a 5-star review of the show, I would greatly appreciate that. And the second thing that I'd ask you to do, promise yourself that you're going to tell one other person, one other chiropractor, about For the Love of Chiropractic. Turn someone else onto it because there's a ton of information to help you grow, to help other practices grow, and to help the chiropractic profession continue to grow. Welcome to another episode of For the Love of Chiropractic. I'm your host, Dr. Robert Freeman. I've been in practice for over 30 years, and I continue to work in a $1 million practice that I built, ran, and sold. I've taught, lectured, and coached our profession and helped so many chiropractors build the practice and the life of their dreams. And now, I want to help you do the same. So here's today's show. So on today's show, we're going to be discussing how long is your career? Because your professional career ends up being a balancing act between your time on the planet and all the things that you want to do and need to do, and the money that you earn, that you're well paid for providing phenomenal care to your patients. And then what do you do with that money? How do you have an impact on the world with the money that you've created, saved, and then choose to spend in what way? I had lunch just today with a friend who is a chiropractor, and his wife is a chiropractor as well. He's in his mid-late 60s. His wife is around the same age. She has since retired and has been retired for several years. And when I asked him, so when are you going to join her in retirement? He looked at me and said, well, what the hell else am I going to do? With a blank look on his face and almost ashamed of not knowing what else to do with his time. Today I want to spend time talking about not what else you can do with your time, but how long are you choosing to dedicate yourself to this chiropractic profession, and in what ways, and are there limitations to how you're providing care to your patients? As a very young practitioner, eager-eyed, bright and bushy-tailed, I was sitting in a practice management seminar back in the early 1990s, and a wonderful chiropractor and chiropractic coach was doing a talk on the length of careers. And he said the average chiropractor's career is somewhere between 10 and 40 years. And I thought that was interesting, and I have found through my research that that still tends to be about right. There are some chiropractors that do wash out at a very early point. They tried for a few years, and they're done within the first decade. There's very few in the middle. And then there's a whole group of chiropractors that are practicing to 35, 40, 45, even 50 years, and they just keep going. What's interesting are the beliefs that some of these different chiropractors have. When we talk about the limiting beliefs that some of us have been brought up with, that some of us were taught in school by some of the professors who were in the schools teaching, some chiropractors actually believe that there is a limitation to the number of adjustments that a human body can do. I don't mean in a day, I don't mean in an hour, I mean over the course of a career. There are chiropractors who truly believe that you have to pace yourself so that you don't wear your body out, so that you can continue to put food on your table, provide care, and be of service, but do it at a slower pace so you don't wear your body out. And yet, some of these same professors at all of these same schools actually went out of their way to teach all of us proper biomechanics, how to properly apply an adjustment to a patient, how to administer an adjustment to a patient so that it's as easy on our bodies as possible, so our bodies don't wear out, so that we can continue to provide phenomenal care to as many people as our heart desires and our technique will allow. I became acutely aware of this when I was interviewing associate doctors to come join me in the office. There was one specific doctor, and I remember him very, very well. And as we were going through the interview process, and by the way, I think if you're looking at hiring an associate, you should go back and listen to the So You Want to Hire an Associate episode. And one of the things in that episode, you should have a specific list of questions, well thought out, that go through and get the information that you're looking for regarding associates. And if you can't find it, feel free to reach out via the website fortheloveofchiropractic.com, and I'll make sure to get you a copy of those questions. But let's get back to this young doctor who I was chatting with. One of the questions that I ask is, so what volume of patients do you think you want to be taking care of? And I know for a student coming right out of school that's not a multiple generation chiropractor, they have no idea. Because when you're in school at a school clinic, if you're seeing 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 people in a shift, you've had an incredibly busy day. Because by the time you get the subjective, and then you go and check in with the clinician, and then you talk about what it is you want to do that day, you administer the care, and then report back to the clinician and do the SOAP note, that one visit can take an extraordinary amount of time, maybe even an entire hour. So a half dozen patients becomes a full day. And as was said to me on a day that I did happen to have 6 patients, we had a visiting clinician. Her name was Dr. Brudd. Shout out to her, and thank you for everything that you taught to all of the students over all those years. She said to me, Freeman, how many patients did you see today on the shift? And I said, well, actually, Dr. Brudd, I saw 6 people. She went, wow, I'll bet you were busy all day with that many people. And a little bit cocky, I said, yeah, I was busy all day. And she said, well, congratulations. If you're that busy seeing 6 patients when you're in practice, you're going to go bankrupt. And you could hear my jaw hit the floor because I thought I was really being efficient and busy, and I didn't understand what I didn't know at that point. But it was a phenomenal wake-up call to understand we learn things in clinic, and then there's other things that need to be learned to really make practices run. But getting back to the young doctor that I interviewed, when I had asked him, so how many patients do you think you want to see in a day, in an hour, a day, a week? He gave me this look and he said, well, I want to make sure I don't wear my body out. So maybe if I see 3 or 4 or maybe 5 patients an hour, I'll be able to see the patients and take care of them and still earn a living without wearing myself out and creating damage to my own body. He went on to say, I know that at first I might have to work harder than that. I might even need to see 8 people an hour, and really push myself. But after that, once I get established, how long should that take? Well, he said, a year, maybe 2 at the most. After that, I can kick back a little bit and not relax, but, pace myself, for my entire career. That way I don't wear myself out. And at that point, I said to the young man, why don't you come with me and let's go see some patients? So he shadowed me, and we saw our patients. And without getting into the specifics, we saw more than 5, 6, or 8 patients in a day. In fact, we saw more than 5, 6, or 8 patients in an hour. And we took great care of people. Everybody was appreciative. And after about 2 hours, we had a momentary break. And I pulled him aside and we sat down. I said, so tell me what you saw. And you could see the look of surprise on his face as I asked him the question. And you could see the gears turning as his eyes were looking up, and he was looking left and right. He said, well, it looks like we gave a lot of care to a lot of people, and it didn't look hard. You made it look easy. Yeah. Exactly. It can be easy when it's done properly. And there's more than one way to do things properly. But any one proper way is better than all the bad ways combined. So for a combination of reasons, I didn't offer that young man a job. We have remained friends over the years, and his career has plodded along at that same pace that he had predicted that it would. He didn't drink in the opportunity to provide lots of care to lots of people, and that's okay because everybody gets to decide what their career is going to look like and how that's going to impact their entire life. So now really digging into the specifics of the average chiropractor's practice or their average practice life. If we know that the average chiropractor sees about 100 patient visits per week, and we discussed that on a previous episode, and the average chiropractic career is somewhere between 10 and 40 years with 2 weeks of vacation a year, if we do the math on that, 100 visits per week for 50 weeks of the year, well, that's 5,000 visits a year. Okay. And with that 10-year to 40-year window, let's call it an average of 30 years. Well, 30 years of 5,000 visits per year comes out to be 150,000 chiropractic adjustments. And that sounds like a respectable number, and it is. And there's an awful lot of chiropractors who believe that that number will wear their body out. And I do know chiropractors that have blown out their shoulders. I know chiropractors who have severe arthritis in their elbows. I know chiropractors who have arthritis in their wrists. I know chiropractors that have significant forward head carriage from hanging over the table. And I also know very successful chiropractors who are older than all of those docs that don't have any of those other things that I just mentioned because they've applied proper mechanics and they chose to dedicate themselves to providing phenomenal care in an incredibly efficient manner. Part of this limitation comes from the mindset of the doctor. One of my very early clients, when I first started coaching chiropractors to having bigger and more successful practices, we were talking on a weekly basis, as I do with my clients, and I'd asked him, I said, so tell me about practice, tell me what's going on. And he said, well, I did have one new patient come in this week, and they didn't start care, but at least I got x-rays out of them, and they paid for those, so that helped pay my bills. And you could have heard a pin drop at that moment. It has nothing to do with getting x-rays out of somebody or helping them pay your bills. And we talked through this. Again, we're dedicating ourselves to helping people, hopefully helping as many people as we possibly can, because as a chiropractor, as the chiropractic physician, I know what I know, and I own it, and I'll bet you do too. Because as the successful chiropractic physician, when you take a case history and the person has come into your office, we both know that they need the care. Your only job is to tell them what it is they need in a way that they can hear it so that they are willing to accept the care that you're offering to them to help them get out of the health crisis they're in to be healthy again. I've had chiropractors say to me, oh, I feel like a used car salesman because I'm trying to peddle chiropractic. And again, nothing could be further from the truth. We're simply giving people the option, and what I believe is typically the best option of how to get healthier in a drug-free way to have your body be as healthy as possible. It has nothing to do with selling or peddling care. Here's the option in front of you for this problem that you have. But let's get back to the whole thing about the body wearing out and only having a certain number of adjustments, in your body to begin with. There's a chiropractor that I know very well, and he's given me permission to review some of this information here on the podcast. When he and I were going over the 150,000 adjustments in a career, it led to some thinking and conversation about how many visits he sees on a routine basis and over what period of time. This particular doctor has seen well over 400 visits per week on a regular basis, taking 2 weeks of vacation a year, and he had told me that he was doing that for over 20 years at that point. So 400 visits a week for 50 weeks times 20 years is 400,000 adjustments. Well north of the 150,000 that some doctors feel will wear their body out. And that doctor went on to say, "I'm no Superman. I simply take good care of myself." And he's an average height of an average build. He's not skinny. He's not fat. He's not super muscular. He's not super thin. That self-care are some of the same things that we tell our patients about and have for years. Eat a reasonable diet. Exercise. Get regimented sleep. Have a positive mental attitude. And of course, he gets adjusted on a regular basis. And by the way, when I used those numbers of 20 years, he had been in practice a lot longer than that. He simply was using those numbers as we were talking about how many adjustments he had done. And he says, "I have no arthritis in my wrists, elbows, shoulders. My posture is just fine. And I can do anything I want to do." And now he's well north of 60 years of age, still seeing patients at the speed that he wants to. He's given me permission. If you'd like to speak with him, simply leave a message on the show's website, and I'll personally put you in touch with him. You and he can have a phenomenal chat. For the love of chiropractic.com, high volume doctor. Leave that in the comments section with your name and phone number, and I'll make sure that he gets that information. But the point of all of this, it's not a he said, she said, look at me, look at what I can do, look at him, look at what he can do. No, the point of all this is don't you dare use your body limitation as the excuse for a small practice. You need a better excuse than that, because there are so many people that need our care. They need chiropractic care. They need to hear about holistic health care and staying healthy. And if you don't tell them as the doctor, as the chiropractor, nobody else is going to. The medical doctor isn't. Certainly the nurse practitioner isn't going to. And as they're sitting home watching television for all the different drugs that are advertised all the time, none of those drug companies, big pharma, are going to be recommending natural, holistic, drug-free care for anybody. But yet we know everybody needs it. So as we begin to close out today's episode, we'll go back to where we started. How long is your career going to be? What else might you want to do in addition to providing phenomenal, natural, holistic health care to people who desperately need it? And do you understand, while there is some limitation of matter, no matter how old we get, if we take proper care of the body wants to heal, repair, and continue doing the most that it can for as long as possible. All right, and that's our show for today. If you have a question about today's show or your own practice, feel free to reach out at fortheloveofchiropractic.com. Before making changes to your practice, be sure to seek legal advice regarding those changes and regulations in your state. For the Love of Chiropractic is an RGF production, all rights reserved. And thanks for listening. Original music provided by Hunter Rich Music.